All right, everybody, welcome into the Fifth Dimension podcast. We got a solo cast for you today, and I just feel called to step on here and speak about the idea of a new social contract, a new way of being. And I really believe there are two parallel paths to this method of being and who we are. One is very much continuing down the road of materialistic, automatic, algorithmic ways of being, very predictable, very controllable, very programmable. But then there's also this new way of becoming authentic, alive, radiant, truly in alignment with spirit. And, I want to speak to both of these paths, pull some cards on it, maybe read a poem. Really, wherever it is that we end up, this is just an episode for me to continue my own creative flow, allow the words to express themselves, open up the chakras, open up the throat chakra, and just see what thoughts flow. I've been thinking about this topic in particular for a little while now, really since the start of the new year. So it feels long overdue to actually come on here and get it going. But if you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe, whatever platform you may be on: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I appreciate you tuning in. Got an influx of new listeners, people I don't know, people I do know. A lot of people finding out about the podcast in my own community right now, which is quite cool. A lot of local support. So shout out to you if you're local and you're tuning in. I appreciate you. You can also subscribe to my Substack, mcdermott.substack.com, mcdermod.substack.com. Really, you'll just be notified of any podcasts that may be put out, some poetry, any new book releases. I am working on my next poetry collection. I'm also working on another book that is not poetry. Stay tuned for some details on that. The writing is actually complete on it. It's more a matter of, am I going to take the self publishing route or actually find a publisher? So if you know any connections on that way, hit me up. I'm kind of exploring what avenue feels best. It'd be very easy for me to just self-publish it, but there's a part of me that thinks there is a alternative route that needs to present itself. So stay tuned on that. That'll all be on Substack. When you subscribe over there, you'll be notified on any updates on that. McDermott.substack.com. Link is in the episode show notes below. You can also book a one-on-one tarot reading with me individually. With myself and Tony, who was on the most recent podcast. I'd encourage you to check out. Him and we're doing daily readings. We're always doing tarot. I've been practicing it for almost a decade now. So if you want to book a one-off session, link to do so is in the episode show notes below. If you're local and you want to book a session, just shoot me a message. We will plan it out, or you can book as well. And just let me know that you're local and you want to do it in person, and we can certainly do that as well. And I'll also have my 12-week tarot program, which is in the episode show notes below. Highly encourage you guys to check that out because it is very in depth and meant to bring about transformation. And really, the timing on that, if you're listening when this episode is released, we're exiting winter and moving into spring, which is a very, very important time for transformation and planting seeds for our next manifestations and what it is that we would like to create in our own lives. So check that out if you're interested. I also did create a Patreon. All the benefits of different tiers that is all listed on Patreon. You can check it out. Great way to support the show financially if you are interested in doing so, and you will get some exclusive content, behind the scenes looks, early access to podcasts, all those things. So check out Patreon. It is now up. There are no subscribers on Patreon yet. So if you're the very first subscriber, I will give you a free tarot reading. How about that? We'll book a individual tarot reading session if you are subscriber number one. Hadn't thought of that until right now. I think it's a good idea. So, link to do that, episode show notes below. Appreciate all the support people give the podcast and for myself. And special thank you to our one and only official sponsor, well, for now, Tranquil Desires. It's your one stop shop, holistic wellness, spiritual needs. Very special place in my heart is Tranquil Desires, and Patty Johnson for helping out the show as you do and giving all the love and support just as a human being and the compassion and love that you share. So thank you very much, Tranquil Desires. And then shout out to Sacred Vibes and Good Time Connoisseurs. Notice the hat, Good Time Connoisseurs. Both of those with Tony and Gunner. We are creating some beautiful things at the moment, and this podcast is a big part of that. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of great updates with Sacred Vibes and everything that it is that we are creating as a trio right now. 'Cause us three are always collaborating, creating. We're in very much planting some seeds right now. We have a lot of big visions. Good things coming soon. But let's talk about this new era, this new world that we are living in. I noticed myself ever since 2020 in particular, there is just a such a shift in the collective uh, consciousness, not even the unconscious. A lot of the unconscious is coming to the surface collectively, right? And I've said many times on this show before that the macro reflects the micro, right? So we're starting to see behind the curtain of Oz, if you will, on a collective level, certain power structures, government, um, certain lack of morality and ethics that we can see take place at a higher level. And there's a lot of people who have already been aware of this and speaking about this for many years before 2020. But I think 2020 was, uh, there was a big shift and a jump start to this global awakening of questioning, not just this sense of who we are, but it stems from that, right? So there's this questioning of our systems, questioning of our structures, uh, questioning what it is that we have been taught to believe, right? I had some beautiful background music playing for myself on YouTube, and it just went to an ad that I can't skip for the next 25 seconds. So if I get a little bit distracted by noise of the ad, I apologize. Um, they're talking about Motorola Razors. I didn't know those were even still a thing. I had a Motorola Razor when I was like 13 years old, which mind blowing that they're creating Motorola Razors. Anyways, there has been a large shift in the collective consciousness. And I think it starts just with questioning, right? We start questioning power structures. We start questioning the system that we're living in. We start questioning, hey, what is it that we are actually doing here? And in turn, that also creates a line of questioning that begins within oneself. Who am I? What is my role? What is my purpose? What is this world that I find myself in, and how do I actually navigate it with greater depths of clarity and understanding, and intention, and with mindful thought, right? So I believe there's a big shift in that way. And we're actually moving astrologically, we've moved into the age of Aquarius, which is all about mind, which is all about thinking, right? And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but certainly always good to get a refresher. We're going to see what I believe is, and what we're already in, this new like it's like the industrial revolution, but the technological revolution, right? Where systems and structures are being created based off of the technological innovations that we are seeing being pushed to the forefront, right? And I'm not going to get in super deep on what the system's going to look like and all of those things. I've done plenty of podcasts in the past on that. You can go listen to any of my conversations with James Tunney. You can listen to any of my solo casts that I've done about that. There is a lot of information about what the system is going to look like in that technological revolution. And so that's not going to be the focus of this podcast, but we're going to see that come to uh, fruition in this age of Aquarius, right? So we need to be very mindful about the different paths that we are going to begin to walk, because there is, in the same way that there was a new social contract written in the Industrial Revolution, where people did migrate to the cities, people did begin to work those extraneous hours, right? I mean, if you look at any time period throughout history, whether it's the Enlightenment, whether it's the Dark Ages, you're looking all the way back to hunter gatherer society. You can make the argument there is an unwritten social contract. And really, I think what the social contract is, and how I would describe it, because for a long time, I didn't actually believe in the idea of a social contract. I think in a lot of ways it is illusionary. It is something that we buy into, but realistically, with the way humans organize themselves and how we are tribal beings and how we're not meant to be lone wolves, naturally there is always going to be some sort of unspoken social or it is spoken in many cases, but a social contract in the ways in which we conduct ourselves based on our values. And ideally, in any just society, those values are going to be based off morality. Those values are going to be based off of um, believing in something far greater than the individual self. I would personally, I would love a social contract that is rooted in divinity, not a dogmatic approach to one particular religion, but of a higher power, of a recognition of source and of who we all are, right? Where we stem from this infinite knowing, right? But we might not all be there in our guess in our level of consciousness and having a conscious connection to that source. So that's not necessarily a part of the social contract, but um, with this emergence of a new way of being, there is naturally going to be emergence of a new social contract in the way people organize themselves and what they place value in. And I do believe actually this the system that is being created is has already the foundations of it are already in place, right? And with 2020 in particular, we're already starting to see this as I talked about there being a new deeper level of questioning and a new um, level of awareness. There seems to be this new operating mode for most people um, into what it is that they are placing their priorities, values, and beliefs in, right? The world is much more tribal, right? You saw this in particular in the US, starting with like the 2016 election, right? In the past, politics could be civil, could be just. You could shake hands with somebody, and it didn't matter if you voted for George Bush or John Kerry. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, we're all Americans. But now we're in a very tribalistic division where you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, you're an uninformed non voter. Uh, and full disclosure, I guess I fall into that third group because I very much have detached myself from putting any sort of uh, reliant on change within the system. I don't look to the politicians for answers. I'm just going to try and figure it out myself and go about my own life and not really invest much energy into the political side of things because to me it's all the same. Right, left, right, two wings of the same bird. That's my personal opinion. Take that as you will. Um, But there's a much more tribalistic way of defining ourselves, whether it is by politics, whether it is by race, whether it is by sex, whether all of these different identity characteristics. I feel that we're being broken down smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller into different groups based upon identity, right? For a long time, we had a national identity. All right. And you know what's interesting? And even though we're being broken down in this way, there is also a paradoxical push to go along with that to adapt a global identity. Now, in itself, that is not necessarily a bad thing to identify oneself as one member of the human race of the total collective of 7 billion or 8 billion, whatever it is that we're at. Yet the ways that it's coming about is there's this almost conforming aspect to it, to where we lose individuality and we lose authenticity because this global push is very much there is desecrating of sacred cultures, there is desecrating of the environment, there's a desecrating of our food system where we're not eating organic natural foods that are coming from the earth, right? We're using GMO seeds, GMO crops. We're creating uh, medicine that don't actually work. We're reliant upon the biopharmaceutical industry to keep us healthy when in reality it is a disease for-profit system, right? So there is this big globalistic push to adapt this very particular materialistic mindset in all areas of life, whether it is food, whether it is health, whether it is religion. Uh, so in a lot of ways, the identity is shifting to where we focus where we're not connected with the community around us. Everything is online, it's in the matrix, it's in this digital portfolio, and that's creating the global identity. But we don't have a communal identity anymore. We're losing touch with community. We're seeing a breaking down of the family unit. We're seeing infighting. whether it's in our own homes or it's as a country or as a state, right? So um, it's very difficult to have a sense of autonomy when we solely define ourselves by the parameters that are set by algorithms or by uh, this conforming mentality, which is very prevalent and pervasive, and we don't always recognize how it's coming about. Right? You have to really ask yourself when it comes to social media, when it comes to just thinking in general. Are my thoughts my own thoughts? Are my beliefs my own beliefs? Is my identity my own? Is it my own creation? Or have I allowed external factors to push this onto me? Right? There's no right or wrong answer per se as you're going about. We are all very unique in the ways in which we have come to be who we are. And there's beauty in that. We need to actually um, it's interesting because all of these ideas that I'm speaking about, when we're talking about conformity, but we're talking about this push for individuality based upon identity, there is value in holding in high regard your own identity and who you are and what it is that makes you unique. Yet if you solely define yourself by that, and this identity creation was actually more of an unconscious thing that was determined by your external reality, well, then you're taking pride in something that's not really you, right? And you got to be really careful about that. Ask yourself, is the life I'm living in alignment with the callings of my spirit? Not just the callings of the heart, not the callings of the mind, the callings of the spirit that you find within your solar plexus region, that you find uh, within you in the gut. It's like that gut feeling. It's that push, right? To move towards something. A lot of times that gut feeling, we have uneasiness, excuse me, uneasiness about our scenario, or we feel this like creeping sense of unfulfillment or creeping sense that we're running out of time, right? Because we are finite beings, at least from our egoic identity structure. Um, so you need to start asking yourself those questions. And if you're not liking what you're finding, there's a very real chance that who you think you are is right now solely being determined by external factors, and you don't have as much of a grasp upon your own reality and upon your own identity that you may want to have. But that's all right. We all are in that point based upon social conditioning, based upon our education, at least the majority of us. There are certainly more people who are raising kids in conscious manners. There are certainly more people talking about conscious awareness of oneself and starting to asking questions and living in alignment with meaning and purpose. There are more and more people having these conversations, and therefore there are more and more people actually interested in doing this and doing the work themselves to uncover this. Right? This is what out of all the work I do, why do I podcast? It's not just to learn, it's to learn about myself, it's to learn about the world, it's to learn. Right? So you almost got to take on a student mindset when it comes to yourself. Who am I? Well, I'm not really sure, but I got to learn it. I'm going to go experience it. I'm going to be with it. Right? So, man, we got another ad going on my YouTube. This is crazy. I need to find a video that don't got no ads. I wish you could filter on YouTube, um, ad free. Like ad free music. And I love putting on like right here. 1910s, cozy night, and oldies are playing in another room, crackling fire and jazz age. Like I love having stuff like that in the background. Like the vibe for me, it can't be beat. Maybe every time a new ad comes up, I'll just exit out, pop on a new video or something. Um, but anyways, yeah, we really need to take conscious creation of our identity and allow ourselves to let go of what's no longer serving us about ourselves. Right? I myself am about probably it's been a year since going through one of the most like difficult situations I've been through. I've had a lot of difficulty and challenge in my own life, right? My father passed away almost 10 years now. It's a lot of grieving, mourning that still takes place for that, right? But there's a level of acceptance that comes with it. But I had a very ego death shattering of identity type of situation about a year ago. And, I feel like it's really been just recently that I've been able to let go and surrender that. And I don't even think I have in all aspects. There's a piece of my heart that'll always remain scarred from an experience such as that. Yet I can sit here with a full, I would just say, a full understanding of that it happened. Things happen, life happens, challenges happen for the purpose to make you grow and to make you better. If you ask to be, you ask God, you pray for patience, guarantee you're going to be put in a situation where you need to wait, you need to be patient. The seeds don't grow overnight unless you got a chia plant. Chia, instant gratification, right? No, it don't work like that most of the time. So it's really all about growing. It's about becoming who we are and planting those seeds. And through the challenges, through the opportunities, through those moments where we recognize, oh, I can make a new choice right here. I can make a new choice. Doesn't have to be like the way of old. That's when you start to step into your own, and you don't have to question when this new sense of identity and this new understanding of who you are is simply rooted in morality. It's simply rooted in the knowing of the infinite nature of the soul, right? Because death is very much an illusion. Once we die, I mean, I, I've listened to countless podcasts about near death experiences and reincarnation and the cycle of the soul's journey. And I've had my own meditative experiences on past lives and seeing different lives that I've lived and what the soul is going on in a journey in itself, to where I understand that I, Evan Spencer McDermott, sitting here on this beautiful Wednesday evening, in well, is it true? It's very cold. It's been like negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit the last couple days. Um, one would make the argument, is that truly beautiful? I think it's beautiful because here I am sitting in presence, being with myself, having this conversation with y'all, right? And so there's beauty in that. But this, who I am, this flesh, this blood, we all bleed red. It's a temporary experience. The soul will continue. There's no question about that. In what capacity? I don't know. Am I going to come back for another life? Well, shit, I don't know. Sometimes Earth School, I feel like I'm a little tired with. Like, have I graduated yet? Have I met the requirements? I kind of like to move on to a new experience, a new challenge. I don't necessarily like to think of this being a soul trap, because then I'm just going to create that as my reality, right? There's a lot of people who think that the cycle of reincarnation is a trap of the soul, and there are negative parasitic entities feeding on the spirit that keep us here on earth. Considering the fact that this can be such a beautiful experience, I tend to think that's not the case. Personally, this reality is what we make of it, and ultimately, if I choose to have that as my reality, well, there's a good chance that I'm going to live that out and I'm going to create it, because there are infinite timelines. We are the creators and we're the masters of our reality. If you want that to be true, by all means, live as its truth. I wouldn't recommend it, because it kind of turns this life into a hellhole. Um, and we feel like we're trapped. Oh no, scared, fear. It's fear, right? And there's no sense in living um, your life from any space of fear. We just don't got room for it. It's a natural response and puts us in fight or flight in the moments that it needs to, right? The unknown is always going to be a little bit scary. Uh, but I wouldn't buy into any belief system, especially when it comes to the infinite nature of the soul. Our 3D rational mind can't really fully comprehend the nature of what the soul's journey is. You kind of have to experience it in some sort of meditation or in your dreams. Really pay attention to your dreams. There is a lot of truth. That is just another version of reality that you are experiencing when you're in your dreams. Right? You could say it's the subconscious speaking to you, and I believe there is truth to that as well, if we're looking at it from a psychological perspective. But you got to recognize the soul is on a journey. You are having an experience in your dream. So pay attention. It's meaningful, right? There's no such thing as an accident or a coincidence. So acknowledge that, embrace that. But you got to have that experience, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through hypnosis, whether it's through your dreams, and to actually fully grasp and know in the nature of the soul more so than believe in the nature of the soul. To believe implies doubt, because in the middle of that word there is an lie, lie, right? So pay attention to the wording. Belief tends to be lies because you're lying to yourself. You don't know if you fully like knowing it. Oh, that might not be true, but I'm just gonna run with it. Follow what you know, not what you believe. Belief will lead you into pits of despair and misery. So, but I believe this is here I go. But I believe it's interesting to even say that word when you put it in that context. But what I have come to witness and experience, there is a new way of operating and becoming of who we are that is taking place. And let me read a quick poem I just wrote about just the other day. Just kind of flowed out. I guess the poem wrote itself, and it's very short. I don't even know how poetic it is, but I'll let you be the judge. It's titled "Seasons of Becoming." The heart's fire brought a sense of warmth despite the wind's chill of a winter night. This tender flame, stoked by divinity, a gentle reminder in the stars' guiding light. Maybe it had all been worth it, as the pains of the past brought me here today. Feelings of nostalgia surface. Only the darkest nights dawn brighter days. Oh, to be that boy in the spring, filled with innocence in which flowers bloom. Yet, as seasons change, so do I. The end is near, and soon I will be born anew. I definitely feel like we're in kind of a death moment, especially when it comes to this social contract, when it comes to this social organization, it comes to the structures, it comes to the systems. A lot of us are recognized the way we've been doing things, it ain't working no more. It ain't working no more. We can't continue to define ourselves uh, by a materialistic, false sense of ego and let that drive our decision making. Come into awareness within your own body, within your own heart, within your own soul, and not the heart on an emotional level. Sasha Stone really challenged my thinking when in our conversation, great conversation, would encourage you guys to go listen to that one. Really challenged my thinking when I asked him about living from the heart. I said the heart is just like the mind in terms of its emotional reactivity, right? So if you're coming into alignment with the heart, best make sure it's the heart of the infinite and not just the emotional heart. All right. So sometimes if I say align with the heart, it is not from a 3D emotional body standpoint. It is from the infinite nature of the soul and the infinite nature of love and unconditional love, right? And when we say unconditional love, what do we mean? It's as simple as the wording love without conditions. I love you if, I love you when, I love you this, I love you that. That's all conditional. Love is love. Simple as that. It's an energy, it's a choice to love or not to love. And if you're only going to love based upon X, Y, and Z, that is a choice not to love, right? And that doesn't mean you excuse uh, actions that are horrific or choose to have somebody in your life who has wronged you, whatever it may be, right? Love is actually simply the choice of the highest good, right? For oneself and for others. If you're making choices that you feel you need to justify because it feels wrong or it feels like you're cutting somebody off, but energetically speaking, and that relationship is serving um, almost, I would say, almost a negative karma and purpose at this point, you really need to um, make the choice of love to create a boundary, to create a barrier, right? So, just something to think about when it comes to love. And, I do want to pull a card for us to look at what the energy of old is, to look at what is this old way of being, what is this old social contract. I did write up some ideas for a new social contract that I will share with you, and it is actually part of the book I mentioned earlier. Um, but let's pull a card here. I just feel called to break them out. Thank you, universe. All we need is one card to look at the old way of being And for ourselves, the collective at large, what is this energy as the macro does reflect the micro? Thank you, thank you. Alrighty, I think we got it. Ooh, Five of Wands. So let's just try and get a close up of the imagery of the Five of Wands here. But let me actually read this to you because it's very interesting. Five of Wands is the test of contest. Contentment is an enemy that dulls the mind and blunts the sword. Peace is the enemy of progress. Without something to fight against, we become complacent, taking everything for granted. The reality is that we live in a harsh world that exacts a harsh price and demands only the best from us, or at least it should. Conflict and contest tests us and forces us to excel above ourselves and others. When we put our bodies through the rigors of martial practice, exercise discipline, we not only know our strength but also develop it. When we stretch our wills and energy beyond our expectations, they grow, just like the muscles of the arm. It is said that to live in interesting times is a curse and a burden, but is only a blessing. May you be given the opportunity to test yourself. May you have the chance to prove yourself. May you live in interesting times. You know what's interesting? Interesting times. It is not, I truly believe everything does happen for a reason. So I think all of these years where we have been focused on materialism, where we are in conflict with one another, where we can't find peace and harmony within our communities, it was necessary because we can look back and we can reflect and say, wow, this is the way we were doing things. We don't have to do it like that. We see the results of that. We see the poverty stricken world. We see the war torn nations. We see the destruction and genocides that take place, right? And the disregard of the human soul and the spirit and Mother Gaia, the earth. So it has been necessary, and there is a time and place for competition. We should always be looking to test ourselves, right? And you can look at this world, this crazy accumulation of energies and events and I would say chaos, and they can look at it as a blessing and say, wow, this is allowing me to adapt this warrior mentality. This is allowing me to grow. This is allowing me to test myself. This is allowing me to hold myself accountable of my own actions, of my own purpose, of the own ways that I go out in the world and I make a difference, whether it be for good or it be more on the negative side, right? So there's a beautiful uh, opportunity in that. Okay. And I feel one of the paths that we can create is to continue to expand upon this foundation, but through a more technological lens. And ultimately, what will happen upon that, if we aren't willing to let go of this old story, a new story it'll be a gradual transition into this new social contract as we're seeing. But there will be a new story that takes place where there is a harmony, and I put it in air quotes for all just the people who are just listening, because unity under the guise of conformity is not unity. It is not. Unity is a recognition of our own individual differences, and it is a choice to come together. Right now, if you create unity that is based upon conformity to specific mindsets, to specific ideologies, based upon fear of not conforming to that, what is the consequence of not conforming? Well, is that truly unity? Or is that just fear based, brave new world type of scenario? And you got to ask yourself those questions. So I believe what we're moving into is a time where there will be less of this competitive mindset, if you will. This competitive, and it'll always exist in certain forms and fashions. And I believe it is truly necessary to have that, which is why I think practices such as martial arts is such a beautiful thing. Because for men in particular, it's men and women, but it tends to be a male dominated sport. uh, you have that opportunity to test yourself, to put yourself in the rigors, test your own strength, your own will. And that's what it's all about, testing your willpower, testing your spirit. Right? I've had to think about this a lot because I'm big into fitness. I love going to the gym. I just set up my heavy bag downstairs. Like, I'm all in, right? Physicality for me has been a way to spirituality. And it can be for that, but you have to ask yourself, what is that interconnection between the spirit, and let's say fitness, or let's say health, right? And it really is. You can almost argue a yin and yang, if you will. I would say, the body and spirit. Mind is an extension of body, whether we realize it or not. Sometimes we trifecta that and we put it into mind, body, spirit, and we separate the body from the mind. And I think there are times where there is value in that, right? But in the same sense that you can talk about mind and body, you have to be able to talk about body and spirit, or spirit and mind, right? So within that trifecta of the three, they do all feed into one another, and sometimes you got to talk about the direct relationship between two particular elements, right? um, and I think it's very important to do that. We kind of lose track of that sometimes, and don't always, and because of that we don't always get the bigger picture. But if they're two separate entities, I mean, they're going to have their own type of relationship. And I believe the mind, I I almost want to correct my words from a couple seconds ago. And because I don't think the mind is always an extension of the body, but the mind is within the body, right? And it is the mind sensory perceptions that allow us to experience the physical body. Okay. So how do you integrate body and spirit? How do you integrate spirit and mind? How do you allow it to not be solely mind or solely body, right? The mind body connection is a big principle that we're seeing take off in some mainstream scientific circles, which is great. But why is the spirit not included in that conversation? And I believe it's because the spirit is not as it can't be tested in the same materialistic way and rationalized in the same way that the mind or the body can, right? Because we can go in and we can measure the activity of the brain, or we can look at the body and make anatomical observations. But how do you do that with the spirit, right? You can't quantify God. I mean, sure, you can quantify religions, but that is just simply a expression on how to potentially develop a relationship with spirit, right? So it's not spirit itself. Spirit itself is very much undefinable by the materialistic standards, so we lose touch of it in terms of creating a sense of who we are. It's a very common phenomenon in a materialistic, rational way of being and thinking, right? I need to take a sip of water. I'm talking a lot right now. Lovely. Hydration, hydration, hydration. Right. So with this Five of Wands card, we're looking at conflict. We're looking at opposition. I tend to think that starts within ourselves first. It's the conflict between mind, body, and spirit, and all three of them, and the disconnect that we feel internally, to where we don't listen to ourselves, where we are at war with ourselves. The wars I see in the outer world, they're no different than the wars I have within my own heart and within my own soul, and the battles that I face within me. Right. And it's just an extension of that. So we can always take the macro down to the micro level and apply it to ourself and the lessons that we are trying to learn and actually express and think about. So I think this inner conflict, if you will, there the we're looking at a lot of the technologies that are being created, like Neuralink and this man machine merger that's going to take place. And if you're interested in that, like I said, I highly encourage you guys, go listen to my podcast with James Tunney. Go listen to some of the other podcasts. There's a lot of information that I've already put out there. And hint, the book I'm writing is about this as well. So there's a lot of information available about this subject. But it's going to create this almost false sense of false sense of inner harmony, because technology, it's going to solve your depression. It's going to give you the dopamine, it's going to give you this, it's going to give you that, right? And it's going to create this pseudo healing, if you will, via technology. And a transhumanist would make the argument, how is that not healing, right? How is this not an enhancement? What I would say is, all of those things that they're promising within technology is already possible if we simply integrate the spirit, right? So we're seeing an extension of the materialist paradigm through the lens of technology, but we have another way that is possible. And I want to draw a card for that other way, the spirit's path that we can walk, and coming together in unity, in love, in connection, and actually start to create a world that is based upon that, right? Because if we're looking at the five of wands and we continue down that path, and we tend to conform to the whatever the algorithms tell us to conform to, whether it's with our thoughts, which then create our words and our actions, we're going to lose touch with that individual spirit, because there won't be any room for it. There won't be any room for creativity. There won't be any room for imagination. Right? We're outsourcing it from within ourselves to something outside of ourselves. Doesn't mean there's not a place for the technology. Right? I touch upon this in the book. There's a place for it. We can use it. We can integrate it. But do we want to integrate it to the point to where we lose touch with who we are? And I'd make the argument we're already doing that. We've already allowed ourselves to do that because we've lost touch with who we are simply through the materialistic aspects of society itself. Right? With this type of transition wouldn't be possible without that level of thinking already being adapted in certain aspects. So let's look at the spirit's path. All right. Oh, I can't draw a card while there's an ad playing. This is bugging me. I need to find an ad-free video. This is about the fourth time, probably the third time. I think it's the third time I've mentioned it. It's the fourth time it's happened. Um, but an ad just pops up right when I'm trying to get into an idea. This might be the last time I ever put music on in the background for a podcast, because I can't stand when it goes to an ad. Let's put a Lord of the Rings inspired music on there. That's a good idea. Something mystical, something enchanting. Skip ad in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. That tells me there's going to be ads in the video. So, I don't know. Anyways, let's look at the spirit's path. Walking upon this path with spirit, the knowing of who we are. Thank you, universe, for the one card. Ha! Ace of Cups. I want y'all to notice the dove flying above it, the bountiful cup being filled, love and connection and harmony. It's really what I was just speaking about. Let me read this to you because it is, like I said on the previous podcast, I really don't need the book, but I love the stories in this book. I love them. Like, they're so vivid, so detailed, and they capture it better than I can even begin to explain it myself. Well, maybe to some, I explain it in my own unique way. And I am writing my own tarot deck, and I'll make that my primary deck once it's out. But I want to read this to you. Ace of Cups. The soul receiving love. From the limitless light of the heavens, I open myself completely to receive the light of the divine. I am the vessel for the soul and the soul itself, and I am the continual flow that allows the cup of the soul to be always full and always emptying simultaneously. I am the cup that runneth over with joy and bliss as the divine light fills me completely. Yet you cannot fill a cup that is already full, and so I am in a constant state of receptivity and emptiness. All right, so this is about opening oneself up to love. This is about opening oneself up to receive, opening up oneself and allowing yourself to give, right? We're in that constant state, that constant flow, constant change, constant new. And that's really the beginning stages of this path, is when you allow yourself to open up like that. When you allow yourself to say, you know what? I'm going to shift my focus. I'm going to shift my priorities. And that doesn't mean you stop being responsible about putting food on the table and working and all these things. Right? To some degree, you almost have to still play the game. To the level that you're not able to play the game, it's going to be based upon your own circumstances. However much you buy in, well, that's up to you at the end of the day. But it's about a shift in one's priorities and a shift in one's own ideals to be in alignment with higher morality in this notion of the divine and divinity and spirit, right? It's all about opening oneself up to that. And so I feel like this is a good time for me to read the principles I was talking about earlier. And they're very much based in voluntarism. And if you don't know what voluntarism is, There are some key fundamental pillars to it, right to free us. And I'm going to talk about those in this. But to me, this feels like the path, the type of society that we can create that is based in the foundation of spirituality and the foundation of honoring the soul. And really, instead of reporting to the the judges of the world and the system and this creation of our materialistic rational mind, uh, reporting more to the notion of God, a notion to a higher power, the notion to divinity and the spirit. And because we always know what's right and wrong, right? We are morally, internally guided creatures. I mean, there are certain people who are sometimes so disconnected from that moral compass. Um, it doesn't seem like that. There is evil in this world. Um, you have to ask yourself, though, how much of that evil was created socially, was created by the system, was created for various circumstances, right? And that's a whole nother that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But let me read to you. This is what I call the new social contract. Voluntarist movement proposes a new social contract, one that emphasizes decentralization, personal freedom, and ethical technology use. It rejects the coercive tactics of the AI driven world, advocating instead for a system where every individual has the right to choose their own path, free from external compulsion. This contract is built on the principles of consent, mutual aid, and respect for individual autonomy, offering a roadmap for a future where technology serves humanity rather than subjugating it. We, the people of the free and autonomous world, in recognition of our shared humanity and the rights endowed to us by virtue of our individual agency, do hereby establish this social contract. We reject coercive controlling systems that seek to govern us through fear and conformity, and instead we embrace the values of decentralization, autonomy, and mutual respect. We pledge to create a society where technology serves humanity, amplifying our creative potential and individual sovereignty rather than constraining our freedom or dictating our lives. This contract is grounded in the principles of voluntary association, self determination, and the non aggression principle, recognizing that the rights of each individual to live according to their own desires, unimpeded by external forces, are paramount. It is a society where cooperation is a matter of choice, not imposition, and where the technologies we create enhance the fullness of the human experience rather than diminish it. This is like a new Bill of Rights, if you will. A voluntarist Bill of Rights. All right. Article 1, the right to individual autonomy. A lot of these, as I was saying, if you don't know what voluntarism is, these are some of the principles of it. And I'm integrating it to a bigger picture to be in alignment with the soul and be in alignment with spirit and a return to who we are. All right. So, Article 1, the right to individual autonomy. 1, every person is born with the inherent right to self determination, free from external compulsion or interference in their personal choices. No individual, group, or institution shall infringe upon the autonomy of another except by mutual consent or agreement. The rights of self ownership extend to one's body, mind, and personal property. The use of technology and external systems shall never encroach upon the individual's ability to act freely except when their desires directly infringe upon the autonomy of others. Consent is the cornerstone of all social relations. No individual may be coerced into any action, belief, or behavior, whether through force, manipulation, or psychological pressure. Now, I would ask all of you to reflect upon, think about, especially when it comes to psychological behavior, psychological manipulation. How much of your thoughts are your own thoughts? How much of your beliefs are your own beliefs? Because that in turn creates how you walk through this world, through your actions and what you choose to engage with. Right? Just a thought. Just a thought. Think about it. Article 2, decentralization and the abolition of centralized authority. Power shall reside with the individuals in voluntary association of society with no centralized institution possessing coercive authority over others. All governance and decision making shall be based on voluntary cooperation, mutual aid, and consensus rather than hierarchical power structures. Local communities shall have the freedom to establish and maintain their own systems of governance, trade, and justice with the full recognition that these systems must respect the autonomy and rights of others. The forces of coercion and central control, such as state run systems, corporate monopolies, and AI driven surveillance, shall have no place in this society. Right? I don't believe in top down structure. I don't believe in the top down approach when it comes to government. Federal, probably don't need it, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not telling y'all to necessarily abolish it, but what I'm saying is you can't, if there's a system that is in place that is infringing upon one's own right to individuality and is coercing you to certain ideologies and beliefs, is that really serving mankind? You got to ask yourself those questions. And when you recognize where there are instances where that may be the case, where it is infringing upon the soul and the human spirit, you need to start thinking about what is a new way of being, what is a new way of doing this. Article 3, the ethical use of technology. Technology shall be developed and deployed in a manner that enhances human autonomy, creativity, and well being. Shall never be used to subjugate, control, or manipulate individuals, nor to replace human agency with algorithmic determinism. All technologies, including artificial intelligence, shall be subject to strict ethical guidelines that prioritize human dignity and freedom. Technologies that violate these principles shall be rejected or decommissioned. The use of AI shall be transparent with full accountability to the people and shall only be employed when it is mutually agreed upon by all parties. It shall be used to augment human potential, facilitate cooperation, not to monitor, dictate, or automate personal lives. Individuals shall have the right to opt out of any technological systems, including AI integration, that they find compromising to their personal values or autonomy. Now, I really do think we're creating a world where that opt out is, look how they treated people 2021, 2022 with a certain medical technology that came out, right? Voluntary consent with all of this is fundamental on the individual level. It doesn't matter what the peer pressure of a group tells you to do. If your soul is telling you no, you do no. You say no. Don't matter. Don't matter what the consequences are. If it brings death, it brings death. It is what it is, right? So start thinking about these things. Article 4, the principle of non aggression and mutual respect. The non aggression principle shall be the fundamental rule governing interactions between individuals. No person shall initiate force or coercion against another, and all disputes shall be resolved peacefully and through voluntary negotiation. Mutual respect and empathy shall be the basis of all social relationships. Differences in beliefs, lifestyles, and preferences shall be accepted and respected as long as they do not infringe upon the rights or autonomy of others. Communities shall operate on principles of mutual aid where individuals come together voluntarily to support one another in times of need without the expectation of force or manipulation. If you're being forced or manipulated into helping, is it truly of your own spirit? Are you truly giving? Like, what's the point? Might as well not. If I'm being totally honest, you might as well not. So, get rid of that. Article 5, the rights of privacy and data sovereignty. Every individual shall have the right to privacy with full control over their personal data, information, and digital footprints. No person's data shall be collected, stored, or used by any institution or a technological system without explicit informed consent. Data must be handled with the highest ethical standards, ensuring security and confidentiality. Individuals shall have the right to delete or withdraw their data from any system at any time with no consequence or coercion. Now, I'd make the argument that we're not doing that right now, but everybody they sign the waivers, they sign the things of where they're selling their data. Um, Yet it's like there's no other option. So is it without coercion, without manipulation? That's tough. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have the answer to that, to be honest with you, because we do voluntarily, when you sign up for Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, a Gmail account, you're volunteering up your data. Otherwise, you can't be on the platform. So that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I don't know. I personally would say I don't believe we're at that point, and I believe it is manipulative tactics. Yet we voluntarily do it. We voluntarily buy into it. What if everybody just said no one day and deleted their account until there was more uh, ethics within their system? Food for thought. Article 6, the responsibility of freedom. With the right to autonomy comes the responsibility to ensure that one's actions do not infringe upon the autonomy or well being of others. Every individual has the duty to contribute positively to the community through voluntary cooperation and ethical behavior. Individuals must take responsibility for their actions, decisions, and the impact they have on others, both locally and globally. This responsibility extends to the protection of the environment, the promotion of peace, and the preservation of human dignity. The pursuit of personal freedom should never come at the cost of exploitation, harm, or injustice towards others. Each person is encouraged to cultivate an awareness of their actions' ripple effects in the world. And you know what's interesting is even as I'm reading this, I can see why somebody say that sounds utopic, that sounds impossible. It's human nature, to be greedy, to lust, to exploit, manipulate, and I think the temptations to do those things, there is an element of human nature to where we have that darkness within us. We can let our shadow run rampant, right? We can be unconscious to our addictions, to our temptations, to all these factors. Um, we don't have to be defined by them, right? So I would argue a lot of what we're seeing today is more social conditioning, more so than human nature. And it's been like that throughout human society. Why does someone steal? Oftentimes it's a survival mechanism. Does that mean it's right? No, not necessarily. But it's driven from a internal foundational feeling of lack, from not having enough baseline needs. So if you meet the baseline needs of people, does that weed out some of those survival rooted um, crimes or tactics or manipulative forces that people use? It's a good question, right? Article 7, the right to exit involuntary association. Individuals and communities shall have the unrestricted right to freely associate, dissociate, or form new voluntary alliances. No one shall be forced to remain in any social, political, or economic system against their will. Communities that fail to respect these principles shall be free to leave or establish new systems of governance guided by values of self determination, consent, and mutual respect. Yeah, our system is not like that at all. there is no there's no other option, especially because the paradigm that we're living in is becoming so globally infringing that idea of mutual consent in a relationship between oneself and the state and the community that doesn't really exist, right? The government holds power over us, but what power do we have towards the government? Realistically, it's supposed to work for us, but we work for it at the moment, at least with how it's structured. So and this is the last article, Article 8, Education in the Pursuit of Knowledge. Education shall be an individual right with a focus on creativity, critical thinking, and personal growth. Shall not be controlled or standardized by any central authority, but rather guided by voluntary institutions and self organized learning. Knowledge shall be freely available to all who seek it, and individuals shall be free to explore their intellectual passions without fear of censorship or restriction. The pursuit of truth, beauty, and wisdom shall be respected as integral aspects of human flourishing. I can tell you, being a teacher, that is not what the education system is about by any means. Unfortunately, I think most teachers are well intentioned. I think most administrators and curriculum developers, all these people are well intentioned. And I've seen some beautiful, beautiful moments of teaching, acts of teaching, lessons, designs. Um, there are so there are so many creative ways that we're beginning to integrate creativity and methods of learning that can stimulate different types of thinking, right? But the structure and system itself is organized around this standardization and passing kids through. So I really do believe, they floated around that idea of abolishing the Department of Education. And on the surface, to a lot of people, that sounds absolutely nuts. But I think it's actually a great idea. I don't believe in the centralization of education. I think it should be based upon the will of the community and the individual, first and foremost. What do you want to learn? What are you interested in? What is your path, right? And you ask a kid that, it's like, oh, a kid doesn't know what they want to know at 10, 12. Like, I mean, get the foundational aspects in there, but I guarantee you, if you teach kids at a young age how to connect with their soul, they'll know what they want to learn. They'll know what they want to do, right? So I think that is it's a very important aspect that is often lost in the phrase, the education. Final pledge: we commit ourselves to the principles of freedom, autonomy, and ethical coexistence. We vow to protect the sanctity of individual choice and flourishing of human potential, ensuring that technology serves to elevate humanity rather than diminish it. This contract is not only a document, but a living commitment to the realization of a free and just world, one where every individual is empowered to shape their own destiny, free from the chains of coercion and control. We affirm our dedication to the vision of a decentralized, autonomous society, one where human beings live freely, ethically, and responsibly, bound not by fear or force, but by mutual respect and consent of all. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's really what it is all about. Who doesn't want to live in that type of world? Obviously, it would be structured quite differently than the materialist paradigm that we're living in. But that's the type of parallel structure and way of thinking that we need to start embodying and start practicing on a day to day, and how we think and how we act and the choices that we make. So we actually can create a world that is based on that. I mean, I can't just snap my fingers and I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and that's what I'm gonna be living in. But in a sense, it can be if I snap my fingers and I decide here on out that those are the standards and the principles that I am going to live my life by. And the world has to adjust to that. It's quite simple. It's quite simple. You get to create your reality. You get to choose what level of buy in you have on a system. You get to choose how your soul moves forward in this game of life. So make the right choices, make the ones that are in alignment with your spirit, with your soul. And I feel called to draw one more card based upon what is this path? What are we looking at? How do we move forward? But this is one of those ones where I feel like I could tell you without even drawing a card, but I am interested in what the tarot has to say upon this. Thank you, universe, for this one card. Man, it's only 8 o'clock, but I'm already tired. I'm such a early morning person, if you will, now. And you know what's funny is I've been feeling quite sick the last like week and a half. It's really started to get better Monday or Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, but I woke up this morning. I'm like dead, so I didn't go to work today. I stayed home, rested. I slept extra, and here we are at 8 o'clock, and the body's saying, "Oh, it's about time to get your rest, sir." So we're gonna finish up this reading in this podcast, and then we'll probably be going right to bed after. But let's see what the tarot has to say upon this. Thank you, universe, for one more card. The Nine of Wands. Nine of Wands. And we drew the Five of Wands earlier. Very creative energy. We do have that one cup in there earlier to symbolize connection and to symbolize harmony and beauty. Now let's look at the Nine of Wands. It's very much in alignment with what we're talking about. This is the energy that we need to embody to actually create this world, because we will face resistance. The strength of the will. A true warrior fights even with the gravest of injuries, yet he knows how to choose his battles carefully. You can feel the ache of a wound, know your weakness, and acknowledge the strength of your enemies, and this is your most dependable strength. The real battle does not take place in the gaps between blades, but in the will and the mind of the warrior. When your will is strong and you wait, watching the tide of battle, awaiting the opportune moment for all your conserved energy to be released towards your goal, then you are a true warrior. From here, you may act as a tide as battle flows, and no movement nor blow shall be wasted. Yet be prepared for the pain of the burn as your weight, as you maintain your defense, as your muscles protest for want, or either stillness or action. And know that this pain you feel now serves to remind you of the most vital of all things: you are still alive. This is the path of the wounded warrior, the wounded healer, baby. That's what it's all about. And we will have our battles, we will have our conflict still. Five of Wands energy is still present. We will have to pick up our sword on occasion, but there will be moments where we want to pick up the sword, where we must rest. We must choose our battles wisely. right? And that's how we create the world that we are meant to be living in as sovereign human beings. This world is not meant to, I mean, it's almost laughable to think what we've created and what we've become, because we're meant to live in harmony. Why else would we be here, right? I really don't believe this is a horrific wasteland and soul trap because of those moments of beauty and prosperity and love and abundance that I've felt with others in the presence of God. Like, there is so much beauty and joy to be found in this way of living when you start to honor the Spirit of God and honor the callings of your soul, right? And you can't sit there and say it's not possible to do that on a collective level, because anything is possible. The word impossible. I'm possible. Says it right in a word. I'm possible. All right. So really come into conscious awareness, one, of your own thoughts, like we were talking about earlier, your own way of thinking, who it is that you are, and what are the values that you would actually like to go into this world living by. And from there, you can start to actually create the changes that you want to see the world. I'm in the world. I mean, it's so cliche to say be the change you want to see in the world. Those cliches are cliches for a reason, because they're actually pretty damn true. I mean, it's as simple as that. So this is a reminder to remember who you are and to be who you are. The only person who can hold yourself back is just you. It's you and what you decide you want at the end of the day. So it's going to wrap up this episode. Be sure to subscribe if you're a fan of the show. I appreciate y'all tuning in for as long as you have. Uh, this is exactly what I was hoping to get out of the podcast. I didn't really know where it was going to go, to be honest with you. But I had an idea in mind, and I think this is just what my soul was feeling called to express. So thank you for being here. Check out some of the programs we got going on, whether it's tarot, over on the Substack, mcdermott.substack.com, or the Patreon. I do appreciate subscribers. I do appreciate the support. I've seen definitely a jump in numbers on the Substack recently, which is freaking awesome. I love it. I don't do as much writing on there as I used to. I used to be writing articles and whatnot all the time. But my focus has really shifted from the external world into the internal world. So, and a lot of my internal world expression comes in the form of poetry, and it comes through podcasting. It doesn't always feel like I need to express it. So, but I might pick up and start writing more articles on there. It's really just a matter of finding the right subject matter more so, because I'm not very interested in writing about psyops and the craziness, chaos of the external world. There's a time and place for it. It doesn't mean it won't happen. But that's hardly my main focus anymore, because it feels way too narrow, which is why there's been sort of a shift in some of the content that I put out as well. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I shall see you all next time. So long.